All right, cool. Check that out. All right. Well, thanks for coming to the immediately after lunch slot, otherwise known as the napping time. I'll be handing out carpet squares for your comfort and enjoyment here a little bit later. This is sort of the INFOSEC solution series, right? So the first one I'm trying to tackle is the talent problem. That's me. Usually stuff goes here, but, we're already late, so let's not dwell on that. I'll be here all week, all weekend. So you can approach me at any point in time if you want to know more about me. So the idea behind INFOSEC Solution Series is that how many people have been going to non-technical talks in the information security space for some time? And how many people have been hearing essentially us talk about the same problems over and over and over again? And we are really good at talking about the problem, really good at defining the problem, but actually proposing solutions to problems, we're not really good at that. And at the last one I was at, I decided, it would be really nice to start a series of talks about actually proposing some solutions to the problems that we've been hearing about for 10 years. And if they work, great. If not, well, that sucks. But, you can throw things at me later, right? So, talent problem in brief. We'll spend a minute about this. Everybody sees it in the news, especially in the industry news every day about how more and more things are showing up on the internet and how more and more things need security and how there's a rash of problems with finding talent because there is no talent out there. And how do we find talent? How do we get people? How do we keep people? And we hear about this all the time. So it's hard to find qualified people. It's hard to retain them. So, solving the problem, we kind of distill it down into two basic things. What's keeping us from attracting and retaining talent? And secondly, if we can't attract or retain talent, how do we address the lack of people and skills in information security? So I don't know if anybody's ever seen the show The Prophet. Marcus Lemonis, he's a very, very rich individual who goes to failing businesses, invests in their businesses, and then makes a TV show out of it so he can make even more money after he's done rescuing the business. We probably won't be making any money here today, but that's fine. But he's got a process that is called the 3 Ps. It's people, process, and products. And his basic theory is if you get these things right, then you should have a pretty successful business by simply getting these things correct. So we're going to have an INFOSEC talent 3 Cs because we don't want to copy him totally, but it's kind of nice to have a catchy little process. Cash, culture, and continuous improvement. We're talking about the simplest one first, right? It's the most obvious of them all. If you need information security talent and you have a wealth of cash and a lot of budget, you can just start throwing money at people and eventually they'll show up, right? Because who wouldn't go to a place when they're offering you obscene amounts of money? Now, and as great as that sounds, and I don't want to dissuade anybody from ever offering me obscene amounts of money. If you've got obscene amounts of money, please come talk to me after this. Aside from being pretty obvious, it's kind of part of our current problem as well, right? I mean, all of us are looking at the skills we have. We're looking at what the market can bear. Companies are looking at the skills we have. They're looking at what the market can bear. And compared to what we're already being paid, we're all kind of looking for the next best thing. And that is cool for us, especially when we have talent and we have skills that we can market. But that's awfully difficult on a lot of places to come up with the budget for it. The other thing that happens is because, basic supply and demand issues, people see that information security professionals are making tons of money, and that calls a bunch of people to the field that don't necessarily have any skills or knowledge. They just see the fact that, hey, if I'm in this career, I'm going to make a lot of money. So expectations and our requirements are looking pretty high, but money is a way that you can bring in talent if you happen to have it. One of the ways that you can use this money to help reduce the amount of headaches you have is if you build really good relationships with HR, because obviously if you're looking for these positions and you're willing to pay for them, people are going to start applying for them. So how do you build a good relationship with HR? Well, if you're in information security, theoretically, you should already have some relationships with human resources, right? They're responsible for terminations, and that could bring in information security. They're responsible for hiring, which means they've got a whole bunch of personal information. So hopefully you've been in on speaking with them about how they take that information and how they store that information. And occasionally, they just have random questions. Aside from that, be a human being. Go over, talk to them every now and then. Don't be the creepy, overbearing stalker type person, but, build up an actual human relationship with them so that they've got some familiarity with you and you've got some familiarity with them so that you can do important things like partner with them on job descriptions. Now, it's always great when we sit down and we write job descriptions, but it's even better to work with the HR people because they've been doing this for years. And in a lot of ways, they know how to word things in an appropriate way to keep with the mission and culture of your employer. Whereas when we write a job description, we're like, hey, yeah, I want this, I want this, I want this. And so when you make a job description, one of the most important things you can do is review all the resumes. Because if you're using an automated talent system, I don't know if you've, spent a lot of time playing with them, but a lot of times they've got questions, they look for keywords, and they're filtering out resumes before they even come back to the HR people. And why is this important to focus on job description and read all the resumes? So let's take this job description here. I'm looking for a mythological beast. So I want a unicorn. And this unicorn's going to run around, it's going to do unicorn things in unicorn places, and it'd be really great if they had like 5 to 10 years of unicorning experience. Additional requirements, in addition to being a completely mythological beast that you would almost never find, they need to be plaid. They also need to breathe fire, and they should have a CISSP, because we like to have our unicorns certified. So a bunch of people apply to the job. They say, hey, this unicorn field is pretty hot right now. I want to get into the unicorn field. And they apply to your job. So you get your resumes. Here's your applications. Like, okay. Yeah, I don't see anything in the jobs or in my applicants that actually totally matches my requirements, right? And this sort of mirrors real life. You almost never get an applicant that is everything that you want. So, yeah, we don't have a unicorn that breathes fire. We do have a unicorn, and he's wearing a hoodie, so that's a plus, right? Fits right in right there. And we have a plaid unicorn, but maybe that plaid unicorn doesn't really have the years of experience we want. They seem a little young in the career. And then we've got this other guy here. Not a unicorn at all, but it's a llama. And he does have a horn that kind of makes him unicornish. And he does breathe fire, but he's not plaid, but he has a set of wings. So obviously he's got another skill that you didn't even think about. I mean, he could fly. So is flying more important than being plaid? I don't know, right? But it certainly shows some adaptability on the creature's part. So we might be able to consider him as a candidate. So, what this leads me to concluding is, are we sometimes a little too focused on our actual technology solutions? When we write a job description, are we being a little too focused on our exact technology? So, when you say, hey, I want 10 years of Cisco ASA experience, should we really be looking at it as a more holistic, I want 10 years of firewall experience? And the reason for this is, how many people in information security are doing exactly the same thing that they were doing a year ago? I mean, our field changes, and it changes a lot. So that tends to, if you look at your own career development, you realize that you're very, very adaptable in your skills. And your skills are somewhat mutable. Your applicants for your job are probably much the same way. So the other thing is now we're back to the cash part of it, is once you've identified that applicant, when you talk to them about how much money it is they're going to be making, you actually have to do some research on what their market value is and be willing to pay them market value, because how else are they going to take you seriously unless you're a really, really awesome place? Which brings us to culture. Right? So you've got to be a place that people actually want to work for. If you're a terrible place to work, it doesn't matter how much money you offer somebody, because they're going to show up for a little while, They're going to collect a paycheck and they're going to be like, thanks, I've collected enough money that I can afford to go look for another job. And contrary to popular belief, you don't have to change your entire corporate identity in order to have a good work culture. And the other thing is if your work culture is bad, and everybody, at least in your geographical region, is going to know that your work culture is bad and that you shouldn't ever go to work for this place. So, having a good work culture for information security people, I mean, we all work really, really hard. We all struggle to keep up with things. So, just some basic respect for one another professionally. Doesn't mean you still can't be a jerk because, sometimes you just gotta be a jerk. But basic respect for each other and the people that work for you. Appreciate all of the effort that they put in. Compliment them on that and, tout all of their successes. I didn't put this up here, but, credit for good ideas. Make sure that if they have good ideas that, when they get championed, that they get credit for those. Challenges. Information security people, we all love challenges, right? If we were doing the same thing, if we're looking at the same alerts every day in the IDS system, do we really like going to work anymore? Not really, right? Be flexible. So, you may not be in a place that's necessarily normally conducive to, say, working from home or, flexible hours or things like that. Is like, even if you don't have like a work from home policy, you actually have a work from home policy because what happens at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning? You're working from home, right? So even if you don't have a work from home policy, there is the expectation that you work from home. So in return for long hours and for return for all sorts of other responsibilities, be flexible with your people's time. Make it so that they can actually do life things during the hours in which apparently every other business thinks it's appropriate to be open while you're at work. Give them a little flexibility. And then feedback loops. This is where you actually sit people down and you actually have honest conversations with them in terms of all the good things that they're doing and all of the things that they can improve, because none of us don't screw up and we all kind of don't want to, right? So it's nice to know that, you can have an honest, non-threatening conversation with somebody and tell them their opportunities to improve. So what happens if you have a bad culture? Well, not surprisingly, your employees leave. And not only do they leave, but there's a lot of employee shaming that goes on when you have a bad work culture. And especially in Columbus, we have a really close, tight-knit information security community. And if somebody leaves a company, we're like, oh, we noticed that you went to a new job, what's the reasoning for it? And if the reasoning for it is, oh, the management sucks and they don't take anything seriously and they treat you like crap, it's like, guess what? That company isn't going to be hiring anybody for about 200 miles around central Ohio, which is going to force them to try to import talent that then gets imported and then leaves about 6 months after they hire them and comes and complains about the same things that they would have known about had they been part of central Ohio. So employee shaming is a thing, and this can seriously hurt your recruitment efforts, not just in information security, but in any of your jobs, especially IT-related jobs, if you're not careful about your work culture. So keep your culture something that people want to work for. Continuous improvement. We're all knowledge workers, right? It's not like we go out and we do some physical labor that at the end of the day we see the results of what we've done. We don't go out and build barns. We don't go out and dig trenches. Everything we work with is some sort of information or some sort of knowledge. And the price of working with information and knowledge is that you need to continuously refresh the information and the knowledge that you're working with, because your environment and the things that you're working with are continually changing as well. So lots of good data that you can talk to any recruiting firm about, because they do lots of studies on placing individuals, and they will tell you that they get less people recruited out of companies that have training programs for their information security staff. Apparently, we are one of the most mobile sets, especially because of demand. And so we tend to stay at places that will get us training. And we tend to leave places that won't get us training and we'll head for the places that will get us training. So if you're having problems with retaining information security people and you don't have a good methodology of keeping them trained, consider an actual training budget where they do 1 or 2 training sessions a year. Don't necessarily have to send them out to, a SANS conference. You can do web training. Most of us, I think, are pretty good with doing whatever is actually available. But, get them training. Because I don't remember who to attribute the tweet to, but I saw one that says, if you're not investing in training, you're funding failure. And just as the thing up here says, is like, well, what if we train them and they leave? And the next question is, well, what if we don't train them and they stay? Because this points out the problem is like, your knowledge is getting stale if you're not working to increase your knowledge. And that makes you less effective. And that makes you less effective as a professional, and it makes you less effective for your organization. And so part of the organizational culture needs to be recognition that knowledge workers need to keep their knowledge up to date so that the benefit of having them around as employees is sort of like a force multiplier at that point. So that covers our 3 C's. So, say you can't necessarily find your candidate, even with all the cash and the culture and the continuous improvement. You just can't lure people who are in the field over. So, what's your other option, right? So, I saw this a couple of weeks ago, and I guess you can't maybe read it from the screen. It says, "Produce great people, and the rest will follow." This is on the door of the Roycroft Inn, which is like an art collective community. It's a nice place. And it makes a lot of sense, right? So then your other option is to build it up. And you can do this through mentorship. You can do this through interns. You can do this through trainees. So let's talk a little bit about mentorship. And you see up there, this is a picture of Athena. Does anybody know why there's a picture of Athena up here? All right. So, anybody read the Odyssey? So, in the Odyssey, Odysseus is gone. His son Telemachus is still on the island. His wife is still on the island. Everybody thinks Odysseus is dead. So, there's a whole bunch of suitors on the island because whoever gets to marry Odysseus' wife gets all of his stuff. And apparently he has lots of cool stuff. So, Telemachus is there, and that's Odysseus' son, as I said, and he's really confused about what to do about all these suitors because, they're really, really irritating, and they're stubborn, and they're very demanding. And Athena comes down to Earth, and she takes the form of this guy he already knows, and the guy's name is Mentes. And she starts giving Telemachus advice on how to deal with the suitors. So long story short, they have a competition. Odysseus is there. He's dressed as a beggar. Odysseus wins the competition. The suitors get mad. Battle ensues. All of the suitors are wiped out. Yay, Odysseus is home. Big parade. So, what does this mean? This is kind of an appeal to your ego when I say this. When you're a mentor, you're like an ancient Greek goddess or god who is telling your mentee to go out and kick some ass, right? So, how can you not like that? So, mentorship. If you're going to have mentorship, one of the first places you should probably look is inside of your company because it's always great to look inside of your company for budding talent and find ways to make use of that talent. If you make use of that talent, typically that says something about your culture. It says you're willing and able to recognize people inside who are already there and actually do something with them and give them a career path. That's really good for your brand as a workplace culture. Not only that, but when you take somebody that's already there, they have a lot of that institutional knowledge, which is somewhat difficult to gain when you're a brand new employee. So chances are really good that they already have some relationships, that they already have some institutional knowledge that you can leverage, and you can spend more time focusing on individual skills that are part of the job rather than imparting all of the tribal knowledge. Reach out to schools. Universities are more and more frequently coming up with information security programs. Not necessarily that the people graduating know everything about the job. It's more table stakes at this point, right? they're setting a bar that says you should probably know this much before you start this career. And, INFOSEC related forums and, professional societies are good places to go to look for mentors as well. Inside of your organization, mentorship. Now, I think we're all pretty familiar with, the standard mentor-mentee type relationship. So I'm going to put forth something that's been going on in educational institutions for quite some time. It's called the triad coaching model. So where this comes from in education is if you want to be a new teacher, you start out as a student teacher. So in this case, you're the mentee. And when you go to a school, you start working with an actual mentor teacher, obviously the mentor. And then a representative of your school that's part of the education program is also there witnessing everything that goes on. And that's the observer. So all of a sudden your mentor has basically your mentee actually has two mentors, right? And how this works is that the observer watches both the mentor teacher and they watch the student, and they see what's working in terms of things going on in the class, things going on with the relationship, and as well as looking at how what they're doing aligns with the educational directives of the program. And they sit down and they go through a bunch of feedback with this. So I think we should take this particular model, bring it into our organizations, where now each mentee will have two mentors in your organization. You'll be able to say, one of you is the observer. You get to observe the relationship, watch the job skills being imparted, observe what's working, what's not working, get their perspectives, and coach both of them. Not only that, but that will leave the mentor sort of free to impart a lot of the job-based skills, and then you can talk to the mentor and the mentee about how those job-based skills align with business objectives and what your organization does, so that you have a good operating knowledge of, as a mentee, what's going on in your organization and what part you play in it, because we all love to know what part we play in things, right? And understand why what we do is important. Outside of your organization, again, universities, you've got student groups, you've got groups there that are focused on information security that didn't necessarily exist 10 years ago, professional groups again. And this gives you a chance to pass on not only your technical skills, but experience and some of the socialization skills as well. Because, the longer you've been in the community, the more chance you've had to practice different socialization techniques. And so that you can tell people, it's like, well, when you run into this type of person, you should probably talk to them in this particular way so that they can be more effective as communicators. Interns and college hires are another way to build up the information security talent pool. What do they usually bring? Lots and lots of enthusiasm. These people are coming out of school, and most of the time they're getting their first job ever, and they're really excited about it. Fresh eyes on old problems, right? We're all sort of captured by the knowledge and experience that we've had over our career, and that's not necessarily. Sometimes it's nice to have fresh eyes because we look at something in a particular way and we're like, yeah, we've tried that before, it's not going to work. These people come in, they don't have that to sort of cage their frame of focus, and they see it in a wider light and can suggest things that maybe you didn't think about. And they have lots of energy. That goes with that enthusiasm. So what do they need? Time. Lots and lots of time. Your program will take a bit of a hit in terms of productivity, but you should look at that as a return on investment, because by the time you've trained them up so that they can do the job, you've got an extra body, and that 20% that you were behind for a couple of months goes away really, really fast. If you're looking at building up your program over the course of several years, and you've got an intern that you're going to be bringing in, or an actual trainee full hire every year, come up with a very focused and repeatable methodology for training them. And that first year, you're going to be doing everything ad hoc. So catalog all of it, capture it, document it, and at the end of it, go through it with your trainee, go through it with your intern, and say, all right, we did all this. What worked? What didn't? And if you've got the observer, then you can go ahead and they can contribute to that as well. And then each year have sort of that after action review where you go through and refine your process, but make it focused and make it repeatable. And that, folks, is all I've got. Questions? Money? All right, thank you.